Hello?
You're not Ellie.
No, I'm not.
I'd never imagined my life would take such a drastic turn. One moment I was planning my engagement party with my fiancé, and the next I was on a road trip with a best-selling author I'd just met. My name is Rachel, and this is my love story. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of excitement and nervousness, as I crossed the street. As I approached his doorstep, I felt a strange connection to the place, a feeling of belonging that I'd never experienced before. Then I finally got the courage to knock on the door. I'd seen him before, a tall, brooding figure standing in front of the old, dilapidated house. There was something about him, an air of mystery, a hint of sadness. I was searching for my birth mother, who worked for the Turner family as a nanny, a woman I had never known. And Jake was dealing with the unexpected inheritance of his childhood home as he decluttered the house. I was drawn to him from the moment I saw him. There was something about his quiet intensity that intrigued me. He couldn't recall my mother, but suggested a neighbor might know more. The neighbor was out, so I decided to wait. To pass the time, he suggested we grab a bite to eat. As we dined, a strange connection formed between us. I had no idea who he was. I learned he was a writer, and I assumed a struggling one. I even mentioned my engagement as we spent hours talking, our conversation flowing effortlessly. Returning to his childhood home, we found the neighbor still out. As we navigated the chaos of his childhood home together, I couldn't help but feel a connection to him. I spotted a piano and asked him to play. His fingers danced across the keys, and I couldn't resist joining in, my voice filling the room with a haunting melody. He was unlike anyone I'd ever met. He was witty, incredibly talented, and dare I say undeniably handsome, with a charming smile that lit up his face. His brown eyes, rich and expressive, held a depth that was hard to resist. Later that night, the neighbor finally returned and suggested Jake's estranged father might have information about my birth mother. Reluctant but hopeful, Jake agreed to visit his father after years of estrangement. The next day, as we embarked on a road trip to visit his dad, I couldn't help but be drawn to him. His stories, his kindness, and his unwavering support made me feel safe and seen in a way I hadn't before. Then an old diary fell from his bag. As I read the pages, I realized it belonged to my birth mother, Noel. We stopped for a bite to eat. Then we learned of an impending snowstorm, so he booked adjoining rooms at a nearby inn. A phone call from my fiancé interrupted my thoughts. His proposal to book my favorite restaurant for our engagement party felt distant, a relic of a life I was beginning to question. As my curiosity piqued, I ventured out to buy one of his books, after I discovered his true identity as a best-selling author. After Googling him, a revelation that both excited and intimidated me. Later that night, we escaped the confines of the inn, seeking solace in the winter wonderland outside. Sipping hot chocolate and watching an old film projected onto a makeshift screen, we shared a moment of pure joy. As the night drew to a close, we returned to the inn. While Jake retreated to his room to write, I was engrossed in one of his books. Very early the next morning, we resumed our journey. I told him I really enjoyed his book, and asked him why he avoided deep romantic connections. My question hung in the air, a silent challenge. He hesitated, his gaze drifting to the road ahead. The truth was complicated, a tangle of past hurts and future fears. But he knew he couldn't keep hiding behind his words. As we drove, my emotions surged. A passage in my mother's diary had struck a chord, a raw and honest expression of love and loss. Tears welled up in my eyes, and he pulled the jeep to the side of the road. He reached out, his hand gently rubbing my shoulder. His touch was a balm to my troubled soul. In that moment, a silent understanding passed between us, a connection deeper than words could express. As our eyes met, a spark ignited, a moment suspended in time. A kiss seemed inevitable. a natural progression of our growing bond. Our lips were mere inches apart. Then, a boisterous bark shattered the silence, yanking us back to reality. Ava, his dog, had interrupted our intimate moment. We finally arrived at Jake's father's house, a reunion long overdue, as they mended their broken relationship. With the help of a letter Jake's father had received, I was able to uncover my mother's full name and address. As we neared our destination, I found myself falling for him, hard. But my heart was torn. I was engaged, and I didn't want to betray my fiancé's trust. We checked into a quaint inn. To our surprise, only one room was available. A flicker of hesitation crossed Jake's face, but I, ever the optimist, insisted we take it. Later that night, as we prepared for bed, I dropped a bombshell. It was my birthday. Despite the late hour, he was determined to make it special. He ordered cake and champagne from room service, transforming our humble abode into a makeshift celebration. As we danced, to the soft melody of a forgotten tune, the line between friendship and something more blurred. The night unfolded, a whirlwind of passion and intimacy. In the quiet hours of the morning, I made a difficult decision. I knew I couldn't continue this relationship without being honest with myself and with Jake. I left him, heartbroken. The revelation about my mother's love, as revealed in the diary, had brought me a sense of closure. I no longer felt the need to meet her. As the days went by, each one a tormenting reminder of what could have been, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had made a mistake. I missed him more than I could have imagined. I missed his laughter, his presence, and his unwavering belief in me. One night, while exchanging Christmas gifts with my parents, I received a call from him. I tried to ignore it, but I couldn't resist the urge to answer. When I heard his voice, my heart raced. I looked out my window and saw him standing there, his eyes filled with hope and longing. In a desperate plea, he confessed his love, his voice trembling with emotion. He laid his heart bare, offering me a choice. Say I love him or watch him walk away forever. And in that moment, I realized I couldn't live without him. I knew then that I loved him too, more than I ever thought possible. I wanted to say the words I had been holding on to for so long, but I hesitated. My heart torn between my feelings for him and the commitments I'd made. With a heavy heart, he left, defeated and alone. But as I watched him leave, I knew that our love story was far from over. Later, as he prepared to leave his childhood home, I stood across the street, a surge of hope coursing through me. Our eyes met, a silent understanding passing between us. A smile crept across his face, mirrored by my own. In that moment, the future seemed full of endless possibilities.